Hi, my name is Amy Dickinson Campbell. Welcome to Veterans Helping Veterans, and tonight's topic is Tales of the Veteran Advocate. I'm your guest host this evening with my husband, Eric Campbell.
Good evening, and my name is Eric Campbell, like my wife said. We've been helping veterans for about 10 years now, and you know, we would say that we're pretty good at it.
Yeah. All right. Well, so you've been helping veterans for about 10 years now. We've been doing this since 2010.
Yes.
And let's explain what really was our driving force. Eric, you go ahead and start. Tell them what really was, what was your passion? How did you get started with this?
Well, I was just going through a divorce and got out of the Marine Corps shortly before that. I fell pretty much through every crack the VA had. I was a single dad, had 2 kids of my own, and they had room for me at shelters, but not my kids. And I wasn't on drugs or an alcoholic, so they really didn't have a program for me to fall into. And I didn't want that to happen to any other veteran, especially one that I knew or I ran into. And so that really was the driving force for me to get into this. And then when we met a gentleman by the name of John Keith, he just made it possible for us to explode and help many, many, many more veterans.
Cool. And so tell them also, your branch of service and, where your tours were.
By all means. Almost 8.5-year Marine Corps veteran. Did 2 tours in Iraq, did almost 8 tours around the world, did almost 3 years in Okinawa, Japan, went to Australia a couple of times. That was good times. About it.
Well, like Eric said, we're both veterans, and we have been doing this for 10 years. And my driving force, a little bit of background about me, is I'm one of the first women on a warship. I was stationed in Iceland. I'm Navy. And I was injured in the Navy back in the 90s with a head injury. And I don't know if you can see it on screen or not, but I have a nice little dent that hit right here. And that happened on the ship. And back in the 90s, they didn't have any idea about head injuries or brain injuries. They told me I was going to have a shiner and gave me some 800 milligram Motrin and some ice, put me on bed rest. But needless to say, it was a brain injury that stayed with us. So in 2010, after we met John Keith, who was also a Navy veteran, who had lots of issues, we realized that I was falling through every crack as well. I'm a non-combat female veteran who was injured, and I was receiving a 10% disability rating for ringing in my ears, but I was on all the same medications that my boyfriend at the time, now husband, Eric, was on. And he had a whole myriad of diagnoses, and we were on the exact same medications with the exact same
Medications.
Well, prescription doses.
Huh?
And I was only receiving a 10% for ringing in the ears. And so there was something really wrong with that. And that was kind of my driving force to it. And so that got us into thinking about how can we do this? How can we help? How can we make this right for other veterans? And that was our driving force for me. And your driving force was, for you, the same thing, was that, just making it right for the veterans. And when we started doing that, how many veterans have we helped now? It's been
Well, I stopped counting at 3,000.
I don't think I ever started counting because there was just so many, and their stories were incredible. I figured we could share some of our most memorable stories. You want to take your most memorable first?
Sure. I would have to say it was an Army-Navy veteran by the name of Mr. Cannon. I don't know if he wants his identity fully thrown out there, but he was a World War II veteran that was at the flag raising of Iwo Jima. And while my wife was helping his wife, because she was a Navy veteran and he was Army-Navy, I was sitting at his feet listening to his stories about how he climbed that hill to be at that flag raising 7 times, and 7 times he woke up at the bottom of that hill with another blood stain on his shirt, new bullet hole, fragmentation grenade, fragment put into him. And he was also a POW. He was on the Bataan Death March. And
In the Philippines.
And he mysteriously and magically escaped that. And I mean, just sitting there listening to his stories, I was like a little kid in a candy store. Magical.
But what was the terrible thing about that was how we actually ended up helping him. We were at the VA for ourselves over here in Palo Alto, actually, for the polytrauma unit for head and neck injuries, and both Eric and I. And we ran into Mr. Cannon and his wife, and he was in a wheelchair, obviously, and he was living in. We found out by them talking to us, he was living in a second floor story walk-up, tiny apartment here in San Jose, just tiny apartment. It was barely, was 9, maybe 800 square feet, maybe.
If that.
And he was walking up, but he had a wheelchair and he had oxygen, and they had cut off his Social Security because of an error with Social Security. And I just couldn't believe what I was hearing. Oh, well, I put everybody on a forced march. We went right to the director's office, and I said, that's it, we're done. We're going to fix this right now. And so we got him the help right then, and then we came back up to his apartment and sat down to help him write his claim, to get him compensation and disability assistance, and put groceries in their cupboards because they had nothing. He was working at Walmart part-time just to be able to cover his rent. And this is a man who the country should be honoring, and he'd been forgotten about. And so we made sure, that he got what he needed, because I couldn't just walk away from that one. I couldn't let that one go without doing something. And to sit there and be part of history, to listen to his stories. I mean, there's no words that you can put on, at all. We've heard some incredible stories. I think one of them that really hit me was we were helping a Black Navy veteran who was stationed on an aircraft carrier off the coast of Vietnam during the time of the Watts riots back here in California. And the racial tensions were so scary. And ship's company on a carrier is 1,500 to 3,000. And at the time, there were probably only, 90 Black sailors, I think is what he said at the time.
I think so, yes.
And out of 1,500 to 3,000 sailors. And one of the white sailors that was friends with him, he ended up going overboard, and they're not sure what happened. It was the middle of the night. He was lost at sea. And from what he was telling me, the skipper never even stopped the ship, did a man overboard, didn't look for him. They just kept right on going like he was never there in the first place, which made him even more afraid for his life. And so I just couldn't imagine some of the things that they went through. And these are just some of the stories that we've heard. And that's just some incredible stories. How about another one for you?
I would have to say, well, one of the more recent wars, Iraq, Afghanistan. We helped a veteran that was over in Afghanistan, and he had such a horrible head injury that when he spoke like this, and it sounded like he had to think about every word that he spoke and carefully place it into that sentence. But his girlfriend at the time called us and said, he takes his medicine and he blacks out. What do we do? And we told her, put on some bacon, throw on a pot of coffee. That will help bring him back from a flashback or a spot in his head that he shouldn't be in. Mm-hmm. Or call the doc and tell them to get him off the medicine. Well, they didn't, so we had to intervene. And that's a really funny story, because Amy was talking to the doc on the phone, and not on speaker, but on her cell phone across the room, and the lady was speaking so loudly, and I mean like yelling at Amy, that I could hear her across the room, and hear every word. And I'm almost deaf. Been blown up 7 times myself, so I've got that ringing in my ear constantly. But Amy waited patiently for her to finish, and she said, "Okay, now it's my turn." And you want to tell them what you said?
Well, I'm going to clean it up for TV, but because
Right.
I know I'm a Navy sailor after all. But I told her basically, I said, "Look, I'm a 90% rated disability veteran with a travel trailer. I said, I will move to your jurisdiction and make you my primary care if you don't help you get this man." He was on 100 milligrams of Seroquel. I said, he takes it, he blacks out. I said, get him off of the Seroquel. It's dangerous, and especially for somebody with a head injury. Yes. I said, get him off the Seroquel. I said, or I will make you my primary care. You can deal with me over the phone, or you can deal with me every day for the rest of your career. She changed his medication. But yeah, I guess we have some pictures. Just kind of back up a little bit. We have some photos that if you want to bring those up, guys, and then we can talk about what we looked like, back in the day. Okay, so that's actually not back in the day. That's right now, and that's us out there just doing our thing. You want to tell them a little bit about what you remember?
From what I understand and remember, that was back with the AMVETS. They had a Veteran Day or Memorial Day parade
yeah.
that they invited us to get our business out there helping veterans. But it was a fun day. We met some really nice people and we had a good time.
All right, that's you.
Oh, yes. That is me in Iraq in 2005, 2006, in the back of a bucket Humvee where we would deliver cash, I mean, hay bale-sized cash bundles to the Central Bank of Fallujah. And basically, we cleared houses after that.
All right. Did that get heavy after a while?
Yeah, we got
carrying gear.
We got into some hairy spots out there, carrying all that gear and running around. Yes.
Yeah, I believe that. Oh, and that's me. That's on the Wasp. I'm on the quarterdeck of the Wasp. In my whites. The USS Wasp is a LHD-1 first of her class marine transport, 600-bed hospital as well. We had 900 ships company and about 1,500 Marines on board.
Great.
Yeah, cheap entertainment, my Marines. I ended up marrying one. All right, what's next on those pictures? Oh, wait, who's that?
That's back to me, back in Iraq, 06. That's my dirty bucket truck as well. We were actually in Fallujah in that picture at the forward operating base. Very fun. We actually caught the Fallujah sniper in that round.
What was the temperature that day?
That was probably about 110 when that picture was taken.
Good Lord, you're wearing all that stuff.
Oh yeah, kept the dust out my eyes though.
Yeah, I guess so. All right, what's next? Oh yeah, okay, that's me. That's my blues. And I earned E4 when I was still in Iceland, so I was wearing my blues. When I got transferred to the ship, it was switched over to the Wasp because I went out of Iceland back over stateside. So yeah, that's me in the blues. What's the next one? Oh yeah, there's me on the Wasp. That's actually, we had some downtime because when you're out to sea, it's like Groundhog Day. You get up, do drills, go back.
Every day.
Yeah, get up, do drills, go to bed, get up, do drills, go to bed. Well, I had some downtime and I was in the band. We called ourselves the Sacred Cow, or the Sacred Cows, I think it was. I was the one female in the band because we were so new to the ship. But we had some downtime. We had just got done with practice. So yeah. We were out for Veterans Day that day. Was that a Veterans Day out?
I believe so.
Yeah.
And I think that's Indiana. When we were at the, not the American Legion, but the AMVETS National Convention.
Was that AMVETS or Legion? I guess I don't remember. I don't know. We helped
We've
with
been so many.
We're part of all of them. So.
But yeah, that was a good day.
That was a good day. Oh yeah, this was actually out in Visalia. That was in the paper. That was one of the photos from the paper. They were doing a ceremony where they were dedicating a memorial in Visalia, and we were there for the ceremony, and they did the national anthem right then. So I had to stop on my way back over to the ceremony, and the reporter caught me saluting.
That's one of my first suits that I've ever worn outside of the military, with my AMVETS cover on, I believe. Yeah, that's when we first started getting really heavily into advocating for veterans and helping veterans write their disability claims.
Yeah, it was a big deal.
I had to look, respectable. So
He even was shaving there. What?
I know, right?
Yeah, and that was, we were out at that parade and just hugging our veterans, loving our veterans. I absolutely love our veterans. So, excuse me. Yeah, that was the day of the parade. So, people ask us, well, do you charge? That's a question we get all the time. We just got done helping a veteran in Long Beach a couple weeks ago, and he's 72 years old, and they told him, because he needed help. He's Blue Water Navy. He's got all of the Agent Orange problems, and that's a story in itself. The Blue Water Navy. We'll get to that one in a second. But they told him, well, if you need help, you need to come down to the VA and stand in line at 6 in the morning, and we'll help you then.
No way.
And when I found out about that, I told his niece who called us, I said, no, you just tell us a good day, we'll come to you. And they go, well, what's the fee? Do you charge? We don't charge. That's not something we do. Well, first off, we're both 100% disabled veterans through the VA. That's the first thing. And so the government pays us. And the second thing is that this is our way to give back.
Exactly.
Our oath to protect and defend has never gone away, and so we protect and defend not just the Constitution and our rights and our freedoms, but our fellow veterans, our fellow man. It's a big deal. So we take that seriously. The Blue Water Navy thing, which I thought was kind of fun, was I'm a geek. I was a yeoman in the Navy, and a yeoman in the Navy is executive assistant, and I'm paperwork goddess. I am the paperwork person. I always tell people, don't make me look, because if I start looking, I will find it. And I will put it together in a way that makes sense. When we came up to Oakland, to the VBA, the Veteran
Benefits Administration.
Yeah, Benefits Administration here in Oakland. We came up and met with the staff. I wanted to see how the Raiders did their job, because I couldn't understand how something would seem so obvious to me, like, let's use my head injury as an example. It left a dent on my head. I'm like, how could that be so obvious that I have a physical dent on my head, but not be able to get them to see that as well and give me some sort of a rating for it? So I wanted to meet the Raiders, so and find out just how it was. And I realized that they were people just like us. They weren't medical professionals, and they weren't legal professionals. They were just regular folks who were hired and trained to read the files, find out where they fit in the rating system, because there's very specific rating systems that they do for each individual issue, and then if it fits, mark it. If it doesn't, mark it. And so I started writing it in a sense where people could make sense of it. It's like, if it was me sitting at that desk, how could I do this? And when I sat down and spoke, in 2013, we met with another veteran, a Navy veteran, who is Blue Water Navy. And what that means is, if you were on a big ship off the coast of somewhere, and oftentimes they use the Blue Water Navy name for Vietnam. If you were in a big ship off the coast of Vietnam, and then the Brown Water Navy is you were in a smaller boat in the rivers, and then you were in country. And then those were the different titles. Well, Blue Water Navy sailors were being completely ignored for the Agent Orange. Well, Agent Orange was something that I've known about ever since I was a kid. My brother's best friend lived up the street, and his dad was an Air Force veteran, and Billy was our friend's name. He was born with broken chromosomes, which even back in the late 70s and the early 80s, we kind of knew it had something to do with the herbicides. And I was a kid, you know, I graduated high school in '89. So, I mean, I was still a kid back then. But we knew that Billy was born with all of these conditions as a direct result of his dad being exposed, you know. And so I've kind of always known that. And then even in high school, I did a report on that. And so when I sat down with this Navy sailor in 2013, you and I went to their house in Kingsburg, and we sat down with them. And he was like, you know, I've got all these conditions that go with Agent Orange, but they won't even acknowledge me. And I said, well, that's because it went through the water systems. And we had the internal documents from the VA from 2010 that talked about that they acknowledged that these contaminants go through the water systems. And having been on a big boat myself, I knew that the desalination plants weren't necessarily the filtration systems that took out decontaminants. They just made the water potable. So at the time, back in the late 60s, this stuff was just making the water potable. It didn't take out the Agent Orange, Agent Pink, Agent White, all of those herbicides and pesticides and everything else they were using that were coming out, being sprayed, coming out of the brown water into the blue water. And I found an Office of Investigator General, the OIG report from, I want to say it was about 2011, and they had, it was 967 pages. And it was maybe like the 600th or 700th page in, and about 3/4 of the way down, one little paragraph, just one little paragraph, because I did keyword searches. And I was looking for keywords and found this one little paragraph where the Australian Navy had said, you know, we acknowledge that our sailors were exposed through the water filtration systems, and their ships were right next to our ships, and their ships were built the exact same way our ships were built. One paragraph where the Australian Navy acknowledged it. So I put all that together with a copy of the environmental impact report from the VA that said that the water contaminants go through the water systems, and gave it all to this sailor and told him to take it to the disabled American veterans, because, you know, we're just the two of us. We can only do so much. But I can write it, but we can take it to the heavy hitters and take it to the DAV and turn it up the line. And I would like to think that once we got that, we got a phone call from some of the DAV people, and they're like, who are you? And it went up the line and got a lot bigger. And it just, as of last year, they actually made a whole federal law. It's the Blue Water Navy Sailors Act, where they force the entire federal government made a law that said that you will acknowledge that these blue water sailors that were off the coast of Vietnam, that they have exposure to those pesticides, those herbicides, and those. And so now our next big deal is going to be Fort Benning, Georgia, because the Monsanto chemical plant was just outside of Fort Benning, and the VA and the government's not acknowledging any of our Army soldiers at Fort Benning, or any of the others, a big training facility who were stationed through there, where Monsanto is literally outside. The entire town is sick, and now so Fort Benning will be our next one. But yeah, so people ask us sometimes, well, how do you fund this? Well, what, you want to give them a little quick blurb, or do you want me to do the little blurb? I've been doing all the talking.
Well, basically, like Amy said earlier, we are both 100% disabled through the VA. And so that's where a lot of it comes from. We get paid from the VA, and we put our own money into it.
Yeah.
You know, we don't ask the veterans to pay a dime ever. You know, if they absolutely insist, we just say, hey, feed us. You know, you buy me lunch or make me lunch or whatever. If I have to go buy the food for you to make me lunch, then let's go shopping.
Yeah.
You know?
But we do have something that we offer. It's a subscription service. It's called Legal Shield, and we absolutely love it. It was our missing link for so many years. Eric and I, along with a core group of our veteran friends, have been advocating for veterans for 10 years. And we can get Congress to move. We can put paperwork in front of the president for signature. We can get the VA and the government to change the way they do business, but we couldn't get private industry to take us seriously. Just as a quick little example, I was studying criminology with the University of Phoenix, and there was some complication with some of my with some of my funding, and so I stopped going for right now. And they charged me for a class I didn't take, and then changed the per credit prices to make it look like I owed more than I did. Well, normally that'd be me having to be my advocate self and fighting for somebody, but Legal Shield is great because my little subscription $25 a month plan that, you know, it's my Don't Mess With Me app. It's an app on my phone that says call my attorney. And here in California, we have Parker Stanbury. It's a $1 million firm out of Los Angeles. And I called them up and told them what happened, and they're handling the University of Phoenix for me. So I don't even have to worry about it. And that for someone who's got trauma, the last thing I need to worry about is a landlord-tenant issue and everything else. And so we call it our Don't Mess With Us, our Don't Mess with Us app. But yeah, then you want to tell them a little bit about ID Shield?
ID Shield is basically it's identity theft protection. It's basically it. I mean, they cover every angle you could think of for identity theft. If they want to go social media or take your social security number, they've got you covered.
And that happened to you. He used it already. He used his. Yeah. When you tell him, you got a minute.
Well, basically somebody hacked into my credit card, and I called them 15 minutes later. They had not only refunded me all the charges, but they also locked down my TransUnion account and sent letters to the other two that said, hey, you know, lock those down as well. So I'm covered. Absolutely.
So that's something we can offer that'll handle the other side of it. And that's a subscription service that we don't have a control on the price, but it's not expensive. It's $25 a month for the Legal Shield and $25 a month for the ID Shield. So for $50 a month, you get peace of mind. And that's awesome. And so I'm Amy Dickinson Campbell, and
I'm Eric Campbell.
And this was Tales of the Veteran Advocate, and we hope you enjoyed the show.